Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. This is going to be awesome. Today we are looking at a turntable system in a box with speakers, the amplifier, everything built in. It's not an all-in-one per se, but it has everything you need to get started playing records today. Question is it any good? You're not going to want to miss this. Okay, we've got a big box in here today, my friends. This is the biggest box. I can't even think of the last time we had a box this big. Wooden wireless turntable converter. Yeah, this will be really interesting. With adjustable counterweight, convert to MP3s via USB, 2-speed turntable, two 18-watt speakers. I think that's why it's such a big box. Audio-Technica cartridge. Let's get into it. And inside of that are two more boxes. I'm assuming the turntable on the top and the speakers on the bottom, and the very cool artistic lines brought to you by the blinds and a little bit of sunshine. Okay, let's go ahead and open, see what we got in here. Some styrofoam packing, and then the speakers themselves wrapped in plastic. So let me get these out of here and we'll take a closer look. Okay, and the turntable itself. So we got a little pouch here. Oh, interesting, they've got a CD in there. Okay, so we have the user manual, which looks to be well illustrated. We got another bag that it's got a cheap 45 adapter. It's got a USB cable, RCA cable, and then a little key here that's designed to help put the belt on. We'll look at that later. A protractor for adjusting the cartridge alignment, which is a really cool thing to include. A 3-year warranty card. And a CD audio capture software. I'm assuming it's Audacity, but we'll have to see about that. And then finally, a counterbalance, and I'll show you how to put this on. This is really cool. This is really, really cool. Actually, I'm starting to get excited about this. All right, so here's the power supply. It's a wall wart, power, probably a 12 volt. We'll have to look at that in a minute. Here is the platter, which is connected to the top of the foam. I can tell you right now, this is a cast steel platter just by the weight of it. This thing is hefty, very heavy. Yeah, that is that's a very solid piece of pure steel. Not pure. Well, yeah, it is pure. I mean, it's pure. It's not hollow. It's just, you know, shaped like this. So it'll be belt driven. I am assuming the belt, everything will be underneath the platter. But yeah, this is a very hefty, weighty platter, as it were. And then the turntable itself is under here, suspended between those two blocks. Let's go ahead and try to gently remove the foam. And there it is, wrapped in plastic. So we'll gently ease this off. Turntable has a good amount of weight to it as well. I don't know if I said at the outset, but the entire package was not just a big box, it was a very heavy box too. So usually, and I know this is a very, vast generalization, but usually heavier is better when it comes to electronics. So, what have we got here? It's a quick start guide. Literally, quick start guide. I love it. It's even got some color on there to help you get started. Balancing the tone arm, connecting the belt, all that good stuff. Excellent. This is great. It's got a pretty thick, yeah, that's a pretty hefty, thick dust cover there. It's perfectly clear. If it was smoked, this would totally have a 70s vibe to it. It still kind of does. But that being said, that is cool. Very, very cool. Let's go ahead and lift this. The hinge, oops. Okay, the hinges go all the way back. Do they have a resting point? Okay, weird. That thing, that rests, that rests very far back. It almost pivots the center of gravity back, but as soon as that heavy platter's on here, that'll all change. Surprised it doesn't just go back like that. That's what I was expecting. And then it clanged into the wall. It goes back as far as like a suitcase player. It's very strange. But okay, we'll allow it to do that. It just feels like it's going back too far. Stabilizing foam here and another piece under here. Look at this. They've even attached the platter ahead of time. and that's because the belt is a little too big for the sub platter. So if they were to detach it from there, it would not conform to this. It should have been in a bag, because as you see, there's a kink on the left hand side right over here. That kink is for it, because it's been sitting attached to that pulley in a stagnant position for a long period of time. But that'll work itself out. The sub platter will pull right off. There's another piece of foam there. And yeah, we've seen this sub platter design before, and it's plastic, it's reinforced, and it basically sits down here in this bearing. There's probably a ball bearing down there in the middle. Yep, I can see the ball bearing down there. There's some grease. So I always do this drop test on these sub platter types where see how gently it descends. Ooh, that's a nice descend. See, that means that it's fitted very, very nicely. And then that means it'll probably spin for quite a while too. Oh, it actually doesn't spin that much. Okay. It looks very well lubricated. I thought that would just go and go and go, but it didn't. So interesting. That may need to be re-lubricated, or perhaps, it'll work fine that way. Time will tell. But do you remember that key that I was showing you earlier? You don't see that every day, so I wanted to show you how that works. For people who don't like to touch a belt, this little key allows you to very easily adjust it, or you can just use your finger. The oils in your fingers aren't going to do any damage, but if you really don't want to touch it, you could use the key. In terms of the belt alignment on this flat surface, you can see right now it's all over the place, having just been put on, but as soon as this rotates a couple times, it's going to normalize itself, which is why on the U-turns, the original ones didn't even have a groove for that belt. Now, that being a tubular belt meant that it had a tendency to move a little bit more than this flat belt, but still, it wants to normalize, and that's what it's going to do. Now we just need to put the platter on the sub platter. Hey, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, as usual. I wanted to show you the backside and underside of this before we start putting on that platter, because it'll be pretty well set at that point. So we've got a couple of things here. We've got speaker connections. This is interesting how they've done it. So on the left and right has its own speaker connection terminals. That's interesting. There's a power on and off switch. There's a built-in preamp for this, so using a magnetic cartridge, it requires the preamp. This one's got it built in. You can shut it off, though. You can defeat it if you want to run your own. And there are obviously left and right outputs. Then we've got the power supply, 15 volt. I'd assumed it would be 12 volt, but this does have a built-in amplifier because it's actually driving the speakers themselves, so that does make sense. The USB for connecting to a computer, a grounding terminal in case you're using an external preamp, and that is about it. Let's look on the bottom. Okay, we've definitely seen this very similar design multiple times under different brand names. And the good news is, I can tell you out of the gate, this is a good design. Whoever is making these, in fact, it's said on the box, but whatever. They are good. They work fine. So it's got 3 feet. That is a good thing, because that means it's always going to have 3 points of contact. It's never going to teeter. If there were 4 feet, you would be leveling them and having to find a completely level surface. This could be stable on a sphere. I mean, 3 points of contact is always the best. There's the bottom side of the bearing. You can see the ball bearing itself. So this is probably a solid MDF plinth with that oak veneer to match the speakers there. There's a little plastic panel and a channel for the wires for the connections. We'll look at that, or not connections, the adjustments. We'll look at that in a minute. And then the preamplifier, the amplifier, all that's in this plastic box. And because this is a solid MDF plinth, all of the electronics are in this box, which is attached to the bottom. Now we can attach the platter, which is really easy. It just sits right on top of the sub platter, and its own weight gives it enough adhesion that there's no need for a clamp or any kind of screw or anything. It just literally sits there and spins. Looks like we've got a little bit of manufacturing string of some sort over here. Let's look at the tone arm and the controls. So the cartridge is an Audio-Technica 3600L. It's a great moving magnet phono cartridge with a carbon fiber cantilever. People, assume that because it's an entry-level affordable cartridge that it's not good or needs to be upgraded. There's no reason to upgrade this. It sounds fine. Yeah, you can upgrade to a higher-end cartridge and, get some fairly diminished returns, but this is a fantastic cartridge, absolutely, especially for a beginner, somebody just starting out, or for a second turntable. Save yourself the cost of, ownership by, staying with an entry-level cartridge, because replacing the stylus on this is super cheap compared to replacing the stylus on a higher end cartridge. So not only do you have to buy the higher end cartridge, but then you have to buy these super expensive styli that can be hundreds of dollars in and of themselves. So I say just stick with the 3600. From a control standpoint, we had the power switch on the back, which we looked at. We've also got a knob here that is a plastic knob. It's got a little bit of movement in there. This seems like a mechanical knob. There's termination points. It doesn't seem digital. These are rubber buttons here and this plastic inset piece for the speed control, the mode select, play, pause. Interesting, play, pause. We'll have to look into that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this whole thing hooked up and we'll test it out. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of these anti-skate weights. It's sort of a higher end, quote unquote, way to do it rather than just having the knob down here. But essentially it's like a piece of fishing wire, fishing line with a metal weight at the end. You can see it just behind the counterbalance back there, swinging around over that hook. And then the other end of the fishing wire attaches to a certain notch on this little stub here. This one had the loop missing. Like there's usually a pre-tied loop on this side, so I had to tie it. It's actually a pretty good design for an anti-skate. If you're new to this, an anti-skate basically keeps the tone arm steady in the groove because it has a tendency of wanting to pull towards the center of the record, and this keeps that from happening. I'm going to do another video soon on setting the counterbalance, but until I do, the instructions are going to be found in the manual, the Easy Start Guide. Everything is adjusted. We're going to test it with the cartridge aligned from the factory as is, although like we saw before, it does come with an alignment protractor. So if you want to make an adjustment, you need to make an adjustment, or you put on another cartridge, you can in fact do that. I want to point out this is not a full-size platter. It's a little bit smaller. It may be kind of hard to see from that angle, but there is an overhang of maybe 1/4 of an inch. I think this is actually a really good size platter. By the way, I didn't mention this, but it comes with this basic felt platter mat. Obviously, you can upgrade that as you want to. But this is a good size because it allows you to grab the disc really easily, and it still supports the full record. So I don't know what you would call the size of this, but it's nearly full size, if not full size. So this is a strobe warning. If you're sensitive to flashing lights, tight patterns, all that kind of stuff, you may want to turn that off. Now, the video. For the rest of us, I'm going to flip this to the on position, and as you can see over here, we are greeted with this nifty blue light, and defaults to phono mode. I'm assuming the two modes are phono and Bluetooth. So you can connect your phone to this device and use it as an input. So you can listen to your phone's audio on these speakers or the record player. And obviously we're just going to be looking at the record player portion. 2 speeds, 33 and 45. Let's start with 33. I assume that once we rotate the tone arm that the disc will spin. Or not. Usually as soon as you rotate the tone arm over, it starts playing. However, the play pause button here literally plays and pause the rotation of the disc. Isn't that weird? Okay, I mean that works, no reason not to. So we're gonna go ahead and spin it up and take a look at that speed accuracy. Okay, looking right here at 33 RPM, we can see that it is pretty dang accurate, if not a hair bit fast. Once that record starts to have a needle on it, dragging it down a little bit, it might slow down a tad. So I'm going to say that's a nearly perfect speed. Going to 45 up here, it's even better. It's pretty dang steady, just a half of a hair fast. But again, that's pretty dang good out of the box. You will not hear any pitch issues or anything with these speed variances whatsoever. For your musical entertainment and evaluation purposes, we will be using Enoch Light and the Future Sound Shock album. That was a weird way of saying that. Future Sound Shock by Enoch Light and the Light Brigade. This is great YouTube-friendly music, very dynamic, and it should give us a good evaluation of the sound quality. For the microphone, I'm going to be using an onboard stereo mic. I don't think there's going to be a lot of stereo separation based on the fact that the speakers are fairly close together. Obviously, you can increase that stereo separation by physically moving your speakers to different locations. But for today's basic test, does it sound good or not, this should be sufficient. Without further ado, let's spin it up.
big blue eyes that turned up nose, that cool and carefree pose. I may regret this, yes, I may not.
Okay, wow, that really surprised me. I hope that came across on camera. I hope you're able to hear that. But these speakers sound amazing. I mean, they're very full, very bass rich. They thump. They actually thump. This thing has fantastic low end. It has good mid-range. I would say the most lacking part of the sound spectrum was the high end. In spite of those tweeters, it sounded a little, not muddy, but it could have used a little bit more high end. That being said, it's very listenable. It sounded very rich, very boomy and bassy in a good way. And I was only at maybe 35-40% on the volume. So this thing has a lot of punch and is tuned very, very well. I think the cartridge is perfect for it. Overall, I think this is a fantastic buy. This is a great starter turntable for somebody who wants to skip over the novelty stuff and just start with a good sounding beginner level turntable. And for folks that are looking for a second turntable, I think this would be a great one as well. I don't really find any fault with it. We didn't even go down the route of the MP3 backup capability, but using the software, I'm sure this is probably Audacity. But it's got some other things on there too. You can back up your records to digital if that's something you want to do. You can connect this to another sound system and use it as a fully independent turntable. You don't have to use the speakers as we saw. They were indeed optional. Good accessories, good instruction materials, good design. Overall, fantastic turntable. All right, my friends, and that's going to do it. If you are interested in this product, there will be a link down below, but mostly just thank you for being there. Thank you for watching. And that's going to do it for today. Happy record hunting. We'll see you next time.